Good evening, everyone. It is May 12th, and we're here to discuss the annual budget for the city of John Day, fiscal year July 1st, 2025 to June. No, we're not. Oh, yes, we are. I'm sorry. I was thinking audit. Sorry. July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. We have all are present, except for Chris Labhart and Heather Swank.
Is that what I was?
So, Melissa Bethel, city manager, and Robert Gaslin have put together this budget. So I'm gonna let them do a lot of the talking tonight. Our budget committee members, sure I get all your names correctly. We have Louis Preventure, Beth Val, Melanie Cochran.
Yep.
Tom Olson, Jody Moulton, Irene Jerome is virtual. And we have our counselors, Eric Bush, Ron Phillips, Bradley Hale, and Vern Pfeiffer.
And we go.
And
Oh, here comes Heather.
there's Heather. Okay, Heather Swank. Okay.
I just texted there.
Okay. We do have a city staff member here, Don, our fire chief. And we now need to select a chairperson for the budget committee. So do I have any nominations for a chairperson for the budget committee?
I nominate Eric Bush.
Excuse me,
I nominate Eric Bush.
are there any other nominations?
I nominate Jody Moody.
I second Eric.
I have a motion. I have a motion on the table. Is there any discussion? Okay, the motion is to elect, let's see, Brad Hale made the motion to elect Eric Bush as chairman. Jody Moulton seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any opposed?
No.
Didn't you nominate him?
Yes, he did. That's what
I
I
know.
said.
But you said motion, so I was wondering,
She seconded it.
but
Not.
Bradley Hale.
It wasn't a motion.
Oh, it wasn't a motion?
it was a
It's a nomination.
It
nomination.
was just a nomination.
Okay, let's go back over this. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to nominate Jody Mon.
Oh, no.
Okay, let's,
Okay, I do a motion
We
that,
have hard stuff
yeah,
that we have to
So
really
let-
go.
I mean, I know we're all
I
here. to
think
have
a
it.
nomination is what you want. because
Yes,
you're
I do.
Requiring an election, you don't need a second to the nomination.
Okay, all right.
If there are no further nominations, then you vote.
Thank you, Beth. And that's why I was gonna vote you, but that's okay. All right, Eric. Take over.
Okay,
Just like that.
all right,
Yeah, he basically just.
okay, we've already done the introductions, we've selected the chairperson, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead, and Irene Jerome is online, by the way.
Yes, she is.
Present.
And she voted.
We're gonna do an Oregon budget law overview, and I'll just hand it over to you and Melissa to, go from here. So I need to intervene. This one.
Yeah.
That one around. Okay, yeah, local governments must adopt a budget annually and it has to be balanced. If you recall from our finance presentation last time, balance doesn't necessarily mean good. It just means the revenues or resources match flows or expenditures. We do this for transparency, accountability, public involvement involvement is key. This is the first budget meeting I've been to where we actually have a full slate of budget committee members. So that's kind of exciting. I think that's really good. Budget law also requires we give public notice. We are asserting to you that we have published it in the paper on April 30th and May 7th. We ask for, the requirement is for committee review, that's what you guys are here for. We will also ask for a public hearing, which will occur later. And then we have to have city council adopt the budget, which you recommend as the budget committee, prior to July 15th. Any questions? Okay. Budget committee duties. We're gonna review the proposed budget. You may recommend changes. You will approve the budget and tax rate. You are representatives of the public interest. And you will act as a fiscal check before we adopt, or before city council adopts the budget. Any questions on that? Like I said, we don't have a ton of time, so I just wanted to give you kind of a quick overview of what your responsibilities are. Okay, so we're gonna start diving in. Do you want to do that, or should we read the budget message, or how do we want to start that?
You know, I think that we could just dive in and we can read the budget message later today. The budget message is gonna reiterate everything you hear
Yeah.
today.
For sure.
So we'll let you read that, but basically we are giving you the budget message just in PowerPoint form. It's gonna say everything, it's gonna hit the highlights of our budget.
Yeah. We can touch on a couple items that just aren't mentioned in the individual fund overviews that we're gonna hit on the PowerPoint. One of the things is that we currently have 7 employees, 5.6 FTEs. Full-time equivalents, and we have budgeted for a 3.5% increase for all staff. Certain staff are under the collective bargaining agreement, and they're required to have a 3.5, so we just rolled that across all of them. In the budget, and because I want to touch on this because salaries and wages are included in every single fund, based on where everybody works, right? And we're in charge. And so we've budgeted for significantly higher staffing level because we know seven people we have, 5.6 FTE or 5.6 FTEs is not how we historically staffed. We've actually budgeted for 11 FTEs. Will we get there? I don't know, but that's what we budgeted for, and a 3.5% increase in wages. Some of those include, some of those FTEs include a fire position, certainly some public works individuals, and then we need another administrative person. Have to. These are musts. This is my own.
We're all doing personal.
Maybe we get to. And then we added another role, operations services and safety manager. That's a combination of some existing roles, and we didn't actually add another human person into that. We kind of move some people around, and it talks about more of that in the annual budget message. Cassell software, if you look on the comparatives in the past, you're gonna find that the computer software line item is higher than it has been historically. Well, that's our Cassell software that we implemented last year. And so you'll see that just kind of ongoing maintenance piece for that in all of the line items. And then we did travel and training with the hope that the council will partake. So those are the big areas that kind of just affect the general. All right, now to move on to the general fund overview, and we'll go fund by fund. This presentation is meant to accompany your budget in order. And so if we turn to budget fund worksheet, and then page 21 is where general fund revenues start.
Irene doesn't have a budget because I didn't know she was gonna be on. Irene, I will send you the budget tomorrow with the PowerPoint.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sorry, didn't realize.
Okay. So just a quick look at how this worksheet works. It's the same one we used last year. And we did change the color though. So how this works is you've got your 23 actual, your 23-24 actual. 23 is the last year for which we have an audit. 24 is just based off of internal records as of right now, but has not been audited. And then our 24-25 hasn't even finished yet, which it ends, June 30th. And so we will have, we basically extrapolated where we think we'll end up for the year. And so in terms of level of assurance, you've got audited in 23, you've got a good estimate for 24, and then you've got a kind of a wavery estimate as we haven't actually even occurred for some of those periods in there for the 24-25. And then on the far side, the right-hand column, you've got the proposed budget that we put together. And this is a balanced budget. We have balanced it. And the items that we're going to call out as we go through this, we're really proud of the areas where we're able to have contingencies. And so we're not talking about necessarily an ending fund balance unless we're budgeted for it. So if we don't talk about an ending fund balance, well, then it's balanced and we budgeted all resources to go out. Doesn't mean they actually will, but that's what we budgeted for. And so areas where we have contingency, or in some funds, something in lieu of a contingency, then we have money projected to go into next year to continue to build those fund balances. Because really the whole goal that we're trying to do with a lot of the choices we made, which some of which you'll have opportunities to provide input on and maybe even change course. But we're trying to build these fund balances, specifically the general fund. That's where the money needs to go because we can use that for anything in the city. Water and sewer, as we talked about before, really need to be self-supporting. We shouldn't be contributing anything to that. But general fund can do anything at all. It's got a wild card. Okay, so I'll start here. On the general fund, got beginning fund balance of $287,000. And what that is our estimated carryover of give or cash, for lack of a better term, into next year. We add that to all of our revenues we budgeted, and on all of these, the individual accounts don't matter that much. It's the maiden line items that matter. The accounts just provide additional transparency so you know how we got to the bigger numbers. When we get to the expenditure side, the ones that actually matter are going to be personnel services, materials and services, and the big totals. So the items that we would just want to kind of hit on in the general fund, our major source of revenues, property taxes. We also are getting payments in lieu of franchise tax. This is kind of a function internal to the government. It's a transfer from water and sewer to general fund. But other utilities such as Oregon Trail Electric, CenturyLink, Clark's Disposal, they all pay taxes to the city, which goes into our general fund. And so what we've always done, as long as I can remember, John Day, and probably long before that, water and sewer, because they're a utility, just like a telephone company, they pay to the general fund. And so what we've done this year is actually increase that a little bit in hopes of aiding the general fund. So that's on there. We went from 37.5, it's not a huge increase, 37.5 in water in the current year to 40 in the budget, and then sewer was 38.7 to 40,000. Okay, and then general fund has a lot of activity here. So if you recall from last year, we budgeted for roughly $900,000 loan to come into the general fund from Business Oregon, and then we're going to pay it to the URA because that's how it has to work. It's really the URA that needs the money, but because it was the city that was the applicant on the loan, the money has to go into the city, and then we're going to loan it to the URA. That loan also in December of this budget year goes into repayment. Maybe, probably. But regardless, we need a budget in case it does. And so on the current amount that we've borrowed, it is a $60,000 payment. So in the general fund, we've got the $900,000 for the second half of the loan coming in here as a revenue because we still haven't taken it. We haven't needed it yet. And so we need it to balance the budget, but we don't want to incur the interest costs if we don't have to at this juncture. So we've got that coming in, and then we've got the $60,000 payment coming out of general fund, but it's also revenue to the general fund because the URA has to pay the general fund back to make that debt service payment. Have I confused everyone yet?
No.
Yeah. I get it.
Anyway, so those are items that are included in there. And that payment's roughly $69,000. And so it comes in as revenue, and also goes out as debt service from the general.
You're just making a loop-de-loop.
Yeah,
We're making
100%.
it
That's what
because
it
we
is.
have to legally.
Yeah, we don't have a choice.
Thank you for putting it into your.
Yeah.
words
There
we
you
can understand.
Yeah. If the URA had been the loan applicant, we wouldn't have this situation, but the city was the loan applicant in this scenario, so. So those are like the major changes. Everything else is roughly the same. You're gonna see OTEC franchise fees. You're gonna see a little bit of marijuana tax, the usual cigarette tax, state revenue sharing, liquor tax, things like that. On the key expenses side, so we're gonna move off of revenues. Going to the next line down on the PowerPoint. Personnel service, I'm just gonna touch a little bit more right now on general fund personnel services. All of them are the same, roughly, to their own percentages, but you're gonna see a massive increase. We took, so in 23, we spent 104,000 in total personnel services. In terms of staffing, we had kind of a decline in 24, and we spent 77,000. We budgeted for a rebound in that, back up to 102,000. But current year, we've continued the decline in personnel costs. Part of which, I mean, those kinds of things and just general lack of spending is why we're in a pretty decent carryover situation right now. But we're at 50,000 and run rate for the current year is 51,000, and we budgeted 144 for personnel services. And you're gonna see this trend throughout this budget. Are we gonna hit 144? I have no idea. But that's what we've calculated based on what I gave you earlier, which is 11 FTEs and a 3.5% increase.
So a lot of that variable will be probably driven by,
You're bleeding.
You're bleeding.
Yeah, now.
let me.
No, I don't, sorry.
I've got to go next week. How much you bleeding on your papers?
Yeah, so would be driven by, the rate or how quickly or whether or not we hire
Yeah,
somebody.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, really, this
There's a lot of moving
This
parts.
11 FTEs and 3.5% increase assumes have 11 FTEs in January or July 1st. Is that gonna happen? Probably not. But what if all the right applicants walk in the door tomorrow? I don't think we're gonna see.
And I will say I just posted the account clerk today. So I posted that and then, we'll talk about it, fire, the thing going on with, some cool stuff going on with the fire grant. And so, it's a variable, but we know that, we want to take care of the employees we have. And so,
And that covers that increase.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense to give 3.5% that's required by the union and not give it to like 1 or 2 employees. That just seems, I mean, everybody knows who's getting it and who's not, and it just doesn't, it's not fair. You need a COLA and, we're in a good position for that. So we budgeted.
Okay, I'd like to say, I know you're gonna redo the union agreement this year,
Next year,
next year,
but we have to start probably bargaining this area.
that bargain. Is that, I think we need to be careful on locking ourselves into a 7% COLA with the union, maybe up to a certain amount, you know, give the city a flexibility. You know, so we need to be careful on increasing on the benefits, like, you know, this last agreement, you increased health benefits. City was paying 80%, now the city's paying 90%. You know, so that's the cost to the city that the council needs to,
Yeah.
you know.
I
As
will,
well as I know other benefits we don't have control of, but without having a good picture of all the salaries for each employee, because you get the salaries, employee pays so much social security, the city pays so much. The city pays healthcare, the employee pays so much,
Yeah.
and so on and on. And like PERS, it's always been an issue with me.
Yep.
And always that employees don't pay towards their retirement. Personally, I think they should pay 7%, but I know we can't do anything this year. So,
I will, I'm gonna say this and then we probably just need to move on, but the philosophy I have is, hear me out. Number one, if you get a good employee, especially here in John Day, you wanna keep them. Because you're not gonna get a plethora of great employees here in John Day. I'm not saying that people aren't great and that we don't, it's just we're isolated. So your quality employees can go to like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 other jobs. And
I
you've gotta
understood.
keep them. So the other part of that is the union's never gonna go down. They're never going to negotiate down. So where we're at, we're always gonna be giving a little. What you hope is that you've made the employment, experience good enough that they're gonna be okay with the increments that we do have. And then third, I'm gonna say, we're okay with our budget. This isn't a county situation where we're kicking a can or we're out 1.9. The URA is a different story, but we're okay, and we're gonna put in some, at the end, I'm gonna take the whole brunt of what I'm suggesting the city do to make sure that we aren't kicking the can and that we help not put this on the taxpayers on fixed incomes. So I know that it's a philosophy thing, but it probably doesn't make you feel better, but that's kind of the direction we're going.
No, I understand
Yeah,
that philosophy, and I
Yeah.
understand that, but it's something people need to be aware of.
So question,
Mhm.
so we're locked into 3.5% every year for the rest of our lives.
No,
So what constrains that 3.5 and what can be the decision by the council and the budget committee to go away from that?
you don't. You can go up. If you want to give them more money, you cannot go down. You are locked into a union contract for this next year at 3.5.
So what you're telling me is that everybody in this town is not gonna get a 3.5 increase in their budget, but yet we're going to give a 3.5 to everybody at the city.
That is what the
That's my,
union contract
that's my
says.
understanding.
But not everybody works for the city in this town. I mean, it's a flip answer, but it's the truth that, this is,
Well, I
These are
just see
people
it
that are
as
professional.
unsustainable,
the-
in my opinion.
it's not unsustainable. We're okay. I wouldn't have agreed to it in a union bargaining contract if it wasn't sustainable. But,
Well,
I
we're,
think you
we're,
have to understand that the Oregon law, here's the other piece to this. The Oregon law is changing this year, and I am almost sure it's gonna pass that. It used to be that you come to the bargaining table, and if you couldn't come to a resolution, the employees would strike. They didn't get unemployment to strike because they wanted to create an atmosphere of negotiation and bargaining. You didn't want to make it where nobody had to come to the table. Well, Oregon law is changing, so if employees strike now after 30 days or 60 days, I believe they can file for unemployment and get unemployment while they're on strike. So I think the whole bargaining situation is changing a little bit, and it's going to be in the employee favor. So don't look for any kind of probably, once you're in a union, it's not ever gonna go backwards. You're going to go forward. So the trick is to make it so where it is sustainable for the city, which the union has to know too, because we do have rights. We can lay off employees. We can change and do away with jobs. So it's not all in their favor. It's just a balance of what is good. And if you have good employees that are working hard for you, you want to keep them. So,
well,
Strategically, it's challenging because, from a very tactical standpoint, you're absolutely right. It seems like we're locked in and we're stuck for the term of that contract, right? But what I like to look at is sit back and say, okay, how do we make the union and that requirement to have a union, how do we make that irrelevant?
right.
How do we create an environment where the employees don't feel like they need a union? And then you can, down the road, if you can do that, you can build some more flexibility into how you take care of people. But the way you do that is you make sure you don't create an environment where non-union people don't get what union people get. Because all you're doing is you're validating the need for the union.
Yep.
And that's, it's a strategic move. It's counterintuitive to what you're saying. I agree.
I have no problems with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I realize that that's the way it is,
Yeah.
but I'm saying to you, in a community such as ours, that is really highly just, people are gonna look at that and go, well, I'm not getting 3.5 in my social security, or I'm not getting 3.5.
That-
You know, and the thing is we're dealing with, some budgetary concerns that are really going to hamstring us in the future. And if we continue down that road, It just.
Yeah.
It's going to multiply.
In 2022,
I mean, $100,000.
Social Security recipients got 8.3% COLA, and employees here got 3.5.
But I really don't care about that. That's, to me, that's just taking the gun out and shooting yourself in the foot.
But my husband's VA pension, he gets a.
But that's just my opinion. You move on. I just wanted to say.
Melissa, I just wanted to ask a procedure question. I was under the understanding that we were gonna come tonight and you and Rob, I never remember what, we're gonna review the budget, and the time for debating and discussing would come at a later meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, if we had time after this one, or, yeah, the next meeting is when you were
Yeah,
going to get into the
so
meat.
it's
Yeah, we
in
really
order
need to
for
get
us
through
to-
this.
So
Yeah.
are you,
Yeah.
are you making a point of order?
I guess that's what you call it. If they are
Yeah.
gonna have the time to present what they need to
Yeah.
present,
So in the
we
interest.
can't talk about every little
Yeah,
step.
and that's absolutely
I-
right. So in
appreciate
the interest of Beth's comment, let's stay on track. Let's
Yeah.
get through the budget presentation, kind of hold our questions back if we can. These are important things we need to talk about, but there'll be
Right.
another time. There'll be another time.
Right, I appreciate that.
So that's personnel services. Let's kick right back up.
Little bit.
Okay. So that's personnel services. We've split that between the funds based on expected utilization. You know, at any time, it's a guess because we do actually report it by hours worked in a particular fund. And so those can be off from budget. And we do try to work in just a little bit extra in the event that it's maybe a little different shift than we intended in some of these areas. Some of the other expenses you're gonna see, most of these are across the board actually as well. The first one though is not, public safety. So public safety is budgeted $100,000. And that's, I'm in the key expenses here if you're following along the PowerPoint. Public safety is one of those items. And so we've spent 35,000 this year, but we budgeted 100 last year. I think the plan is to continue moving forward to get to that 100,000, and that's contracting with the sheriff's office. Other areas that do affect the rest of the budget, audit, we're budgeting for 2 years instead of 1. With our fingers crossed, we actually get there in 2 years, to getting caught up completely, which is 2 years behind, or will be by the end of this year, in this next budget year. We've also budgeted higher on both legal and professional services. Professional services specifically, we're going to go out for IT services, which we have not historically had to pay significantly for. So that's going to bolster that as well. On legal, I think we already talked about having to deal with some collective bargaining and things like that that could cause additional legal costs to be incurred. Insurance, just I'll mention that because it affects all funds. There's about an 8% increase budgeted across the board for insurance. Okay. Yeah, I'll get there. Other notable items in the general fund. I didn't put this on the slide, but $30,000 for the bathroom downstairs that
Yeah.
needs to get remodeled.
But
that
it's
is in
still
there.
sitting out there in the hall.
Yeah, that's in there. I previously had mentioned the debt service, which is the loan to Business Oregon and paying that back. That's $69,000. And then I think it's really important to know where we are subsidizing and where we aren't subsidizing. If you look, so remember, the general fund is the wild card. It can do whatever it wants in terms of paying money to these other funds to support them. And so you've got, historically, we've always, or at least for the recent history in 24, and then current, and then also the budget year, we've subsidized community development. 152 in 24, 36 in the current year, and then we budgeted for 124 in the current budget year. And we'll talk about what that is when we get to the community development fund. We've also subsidized in prior years, motor pool, street, and then URA. We did budget for a transfer to URA of 925,000. And then we do have, ta-da, an operating contingency budget of 123,190.
It's money left over, guys.
Yeah, that's great. That's how we build into the future. Okay, next slide. So the major revenues from fire, just as a quick reminder, fire is a department of the general fund. Anything left over If there were a profit at the end of the day, it would be rolled into the general fund. Realistically, it's a subsidy, and so it just detracts from the overall, general fund balance. Our revenues that come in here, we get rental income, from GCECA, and then you get, a payment from the rural fire district. And then we also budgeted for 130,000 in grant revenue. 95,000 for a specific, grant that we've also budgeted 100,000 in expenditures for, and then 35,000 for a staffing grant for fire. And we budgeted that 35 in wages and salaries, for the current year. And so the key items to discuss in fire, you'll notice that we're moving up from 34,000 to 91,000 in total personnel services costs. That 34 is historically low. You can see we're at 39, 41, and then we went to 34 this year. And so we've added 35 and then gone back up to a more realistic number for fire law, consistent with historic. Okay, and then other notable items, we've got fire costs.
Close yours.
Yeah, so
Close yours.
so let me hit the transfers real quick. So there's a couple of transfers in the departmental fund. I just feel this is important so people know.
Yeah,
I'm not advocating any position, it's just,
Can you just say which page you're referring to?
yeah, sorry, page 25. We're gonna hop to page 25 for a second. And so transfer to water fund because the fire department borrowed money from the water fund. So I think it was actually to build this building that we're in right now. That was part of it. There was also also a bond. But it pays 42,992 every year back to the water fund, which includes interest, and that would go on through 2027. And then we also transferred 25,000 to the motor pool in a separate department of the motor pool fund that's just for fire. One item of note here is our property tax income for the current year is estimated to be $350,000 to the entire general fund. That's meant to support your whole city, right? Your total cost for the fire department is $350,000. Again, not advocating any position, just educating. Yeah, ending fund balance is included in the general fund. Point for discussion, and maybe not right this second, but for discussion as we go through this budget process. Other cities have looked at and some are implementing public safety fees, which is just an add-on fee that goes to your water bill.
Utility bill.
Sorry. You're right.
Is the right legal terminology.
Water and sewer. Anyway, I'm not advocating any position. That is how general funds are subsidized now in the state of Oregon. Thank you, Measure 5, which limited property tax income to various governmental entities. But I think a survey was recently done. Some 50% of cities in the state of Oregon a couple of years ago. 60% of cities in the state of Oregon have some level of fee that goes into their general fund off of their water and sewer bill. I know that at least 2 other cities have in the last year implemented it, and one more near us is going to implement it in the near future. So just something to think about. Again, not advocating a position. The goal is to increase general fund balance. Moving on. Street fund overview. Street fund is impacted significantly. We're losing $175,000 this year in Grant County Forest receipts that we have historically received. In 23, we received 168,000, 24, we received 169, and last year, or the current year rather, we received 175. You'll notice there's 0 budgeted for those next year, because we know we're not getting them. Carryover balance is 555,000. Our major revenues in the street fund are the gasoline tax, which, we're budgeting 130, which is consistent for prior years. To be honest with you, I don't know if we're gonna get to 130. With the rise of electric vehicles, those gasoline tax dollars have actually decreased across the board. The state has talked about other ways of developing those, and we should get our share of that. They haven't passed yet, so we'll see. We've also budgeted 250,000 for the small city allotment grant, which is to be used for, repairing repairing some of downtown sidewalk. So those really your only three items, your carryover, gasoline tax, and grant revenue. So if we move on to page 28. Street fund, consistent with all other funds, has a significant increase over current year run rate, in wages. You'll notice that that compares, it's still higher than 23 when we were fully budgeted, but we have to build inflation into that. And, you know, PERS items, actually, PERS has increased significantly, since then. So, I know somebody mentioned that already. I just want to call that stuff out. Okay. And then the key expenses, we just talked about budgeted FTEs, parks. So since the parks were originally built with grants in the street fund, historically, the maintenance on those parks had been budgeted in the street fund. As we were doing the budget, we're like, actually, that's not okay. You can build sidewalks and trails out of street fund dollars. You can't maintain them, especially parks. So we moved those, you'll see this showing up in community development, but you'll notice, in the current year, we had 30,000 budgeted for parks and building maintenance in the street fund. We only spent $1,500, I think we're fine, realistically, there, but we budgeted 0 in the current year. So that's the important thing to note in that. We also, we want to move on to the next page, which is, page 29. We've got the capital outlay items, in here. And so in street fund, we budgeted for trails and bridges. My understanding is that there's some work that needs to be done on our existing trails and bridges. And that is allowable. Again, the construction of trails, is allowed in there. And then we've got the expenditure side of the SCA grant, which was the small city allotment grant, which was budgeted in revenue. So it's a direct 250 pass through. And then we budgeted 100,000 for street repair. I think this is in response to Heather's comment last year during the budget committee piece. You're only budgeting 30,000. No, we're budgeting 100,000 this year. So I don't know if it gets spent, but we put it in there in hopes of like getting it to the point where we can actually.
Yeah, it's a savings account to move forward and build that, so.
That's good.
Another item you'll notice down here in non-departmental, we are decreasing the amount that we're transferring to the motor pool fund. I'll talk more about that when we get to the motor pool and the uncompensated absence fund. And then operating contingency, we did budget for an operating contingency in the street. It's 116,000. So we got something. No subsidies into street this year. All right, IT fund. We tried to get rid of it last year. It's still with us. So we have to sell the properties. Could we close it out? Sure. I think it's just easier and safer to just leave everything in the IT fund until it's all gone. So we've estimated collections of 130,000 on the sale of the Seneca building this year, and that's in the current year column. It hasn't actually closed yet, right?
May 16th.
Yeah, so we're not there yet. We're getting close. And then we budgeted just 100,000. We have no idea what the John Day building is gonna sell for or when it's gonna sell, but we did budget 100,000 for that sale in the current year. And all we have done in this is try to balance the budget because we're starting with a budget deficit of $69,000. Just the items that you have to know in materials and services on page 32. The carrying cost, they're just high. You know, we actually exceeded budget this year in the current period, in an attempt to, get rid of them under the budget last time. We budgeted for carrying them 3 months and it's gone significantly higher. So we kind of put everything else we had under materials and services. Will we need the full 30? Gosh, I hope not. But because of how it ended up this year, we just wanted to budget enough to make sure we had room
Be
in there.
conservative.
Okay, and then so the hope with that is that we'll just close that. No benefits in the other funds or detriment. Page 34 on the debt service. Two-sided pages are getting to. We're good. Okay. Debt services and in and out. That's the intent of it. You've got your local option levy revenue coming in. You've got a beginning balance of $33,000. It has one purpose, and that's to pay the GO bond on the fire hall. GO is general obligation fund. That's why it has its own fund. That's it. And then we have an unappropriated ending fund balance of 33,000 that will carry forward and continue making that payment. Moving on to community development. All right, beginning fund balance in community development is $50,000. New revenues in this are your transient room tax on page 36, your transient room tax, which we budgeted for 58,000. That's what our run rate is this year. So we budgeted 35,000 last year. If you look at history, it was 45, then 51, and then current year run rate is 58. So we don't know where it goes. It may be higher than 58, but we were trying to be conservative, but also realistic. So we budgeted 58,000 in the current year. That is split 70-30. So 70% of that is restricted, and 30% of it, we'll talk about in a second. But the 70% that's restricted, we carry forward. And so you're gonna see an item significantly larger than your transit room tax, because some of that net working capital and beginning fund balance includes that 70% that was restricted in the prior year. So we'll hit that in a second. Of note, community development fund is being subsidized by the general fund, 124,000, which I mentioned earlier. Your economic development fee, that's that $6 a month per person, goes into this, that's $78,000. And then I've got an asterisk on the slide. If you're looking at it, it says planning fees. There's some discussion later on about increasing planning fees. And so we budgeted consistent with current year run rate, though that could be significantly higher. But we didn't need to budget it at this point because the budget is for expenditures. And so if we get more revenues than we budgeted for, then yay for us, but it doesn't really need to be budgeted. We don't need it. Okay, page 37. So this is where I'm talking about that 70%. I'm just going to touch on that really quick. And so if you go to the very last line in materials and services, tourism, 70%, you'll see it's $76,000, which greatly exceeds the $58,000 that we budgeted for transfer room tax, but that's carryover. We budgeted 24,500 in the current year to be expended on that. We didn't expend any of that, and we actually received 58,000. So there's carryover in there. So you got to do something with those dollars realistically, or that's just going to continue to grow in this restricted fund balance item. So just kind of try to give some explanation there. Touch on the 30% in a second. Code enforcement, we budgeted a new line of $50,000 in code enforcement. That would also be some kind of contract with the county or some other entity to actually do code enforcement within the city of John Day. It doesn't exist as of right now, but we budgeted for that. And that's in there. And then I already mentioned earlier in street fund that parks and building maintenance has been moved over here. That's a new budget line item at 30,000. Okay, so this is another discussion point, 30%. So historically, we've used it for community grants, other things like donations. Somebody comes in and says, hey, I need $1,000 for my blah, blah program. We say, okay, cool, here's $1,000. Do you want to do that? You don't have to. That 30% is unrestricted dollars and can be used to fund anything you want to. And so anyway, that 30% is 25,756 and does not carry over year to year. That's just what we have to do.
Something to think of.
Yeah, just kind of items to chew on. Certainly would help just offset some other expenses. They wouldn't have to have a separate line item for them. I mean, if you don't want to use it for just giving out grants and programs and other things like that, it would just offset other costs that are already budgeted without a separate. Okay. Motor pool. Page 40. So these internal service funds, there's two of them. We have uncompensated absences or unpaid comp, what do we call it? Unpaid comp fund, yeah. That one and motor pool. these are internal service funds, which means we just take all the funds and we siphon off some of their money and put it into this for a specified purpose that is shared by the other funds of the city. With motor pool, we recognize that there's a significant need for motor pool and it's gonna be ongoing, and it's a good way to account for the vehicles that the city needs to operate. All we did with motor pool is say, actually, we have a really good sustainable balance in there, so let's maybe reduce the load on the other funds right now as we continue to build up their fund balances. And so what we did is we said, well, water did 45,000 last year, let's make it 40. Sewer did 75 last year, but that's not really real. Because what was happening is they had previously budgeted to where the sewer plant and the sewer system each paid almost $40,000. And so when we combined them, we kept it the same, we essentially held harmless the way it was in the prior year. But we wanted to make sure that we reduced it this year to just have it in sewer be one operation. And so it pays the same amount as well. I don't see a compelling argument for why sewer should pay double what water is paying. I mean, if you guys see that, we can certainly change that number, but that was kind of where we ended up on this. And then street fund, we reduced down to 20,000 from 40,000. So that's the income coming into this fund. Its carryover balance is 271,000, which is a significant growth from the prior year. And we just didn't see the need to siphon off more of the fund balances from these other funds that are in pretty high need of these. Same thing as in the other funds. Personnel services is increased over current year run rate. But if you notice, I mean, we didn't spend a lot here. So as our workforce has shrunk, this is one of the first areas that loses time allocated to it. And so there may be some deferred maintenance in here in reality, and we may see a rebound in personnel services as we begin to hire again. But more likely, I think the deferred maintenance is going to result with materials and services costs rising. And so we did, even though our run rate for the year is a generous 35,000, we budgeted back up to level with the prior year at 76,000. In this fund, we haven't historically budgeted a contingency. What we do is we put whatever's left over our projected ending fund balance as vehicle purchases. We have no designs on buying a vehicle, and anything that large would come through council. So you will have direct control over that. The point is to say, if we have a catastrophic failure of some needed piece of equipment, we want to be able to access those funds quicker. So that's why we put that in there instead of contingency. Okay. As noted earlier, and that's 179,000. As noted earlier, according to page 42, fire department has its own segment of the motor pool. The transfer from fire to motor pool did not change. We left it at 25,000 just because it's its own thing. We kind of try to keep this one separate and have some semblance of a continuing as its own fund. So all we did is budget for what we think was going to happen in there, which is just on materials and services, which is just a small increase over the prior year budget from 45 to 45.6. And really that's just insurance moving up there, and then material or repairs and maintenance moving. We did show a small increase in this department's version of contingency, which is fire truck replacement at 26,570. Unpaid count. So when we got to working on the budget last year, Melissa and I kind of decided, we need the funds such as general fund and street fund, which at the time we thought were going to be very significant negative fund balance, sewer as well, to really keep as much of those dollars in their fund as possible. And as we've had turnover this year, the 138,000 that was in this fund was drawn down dramatically. Because that's what it was for, was to pay costs. What it is accrued unpaid compensation, such as vacation payouts, other payouts, any kind of comp that's accrued but not paid, earned but not paid at any point in time. As we've shown these to council, the response has been, gosh, it's great that we have the unpaid comp. Our intent, in all honesty, was actually to make it go away. It's not required, it's not obligated. So my question to council and to the budget committee is, we can keep this going. We can continue to siphon funds off of these other funds to build its balance back up to where it needs to be. As of right now, it's probably appropriate for the number of staff that we have. It might be a little underfunded, but it's not significantly
For this year.
for this
It's
year.
not gonna be a problem.
But we would have to build it back up. And so just throwing that out there is, do you want us to continue doing this? We can. We have no problem with that. It's just the intent was to build back the main funds rather than have the luxury of having a secondary fund where it accumulates these. We can pay those costs out of the individual funds.
And
So,
yeah,
yeah.
just something to think about. It's not gonna affect this year's budget. It's for us moving forward.
I mean, unless.
Yeah.
This is kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I can change it for next.
Well, you can look in if it's bothering you.
Well, we don't have to change it. We're gonna fund it next year.
Well, maybe next. It's your call. It's your call.
We can. We have time. Yeah, half an hour.
I think we've got time to just touch
You wanna
on
wait
this.
till the
really
end?
quick.
Let's wait till the end.
Okay.
Let's wait till the end.
So we're gonna talk about this particular one at the end.
I
Yeah.
feel like we have to
Yeah.
talk about this one today.
Okay.
He does, I don't.
I don't want to have to do it on the fly.
We'll wait
Yeah.
till the end.
Guys, we'll just
Let's
make these
go.
transfers, 50 different adjustments, the next budget meeting. We good.
I've seen you do it.
Don't like
I never
it.
do it.
Okay. Anyway, water fund. Okay, so beginning fund balance,
This is the one everybody should smile on.
that's where all the money is.
Yeah. That's where
There's more money in our beginning fund balance in water than we have in actual cash for the entire city.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, but anyway, it's called, it has 3 letters, URA. But anyway, that's what you see here. We have a huge fund balance of water. So water funds everything that we do here. We have the transfer from the general fund, which is just a repayment of a loan from the prior year. We have utility fees in there at 714, which is consistent with prior year budget, is actually lower than prior year revenue. Or the current year estimated revenue, you'll note. Also, we may be increasing utility fees. And so it could end up significantly higher. Back to conservatism, which if you read the budget message, you'll see is throughout, we don't need it. Because we're gonna actually budget a significant unappropriated in fund balance, so we don't need to budget more revenues in this fund to be able to meet our current obligations. So that was that. Moving on to page 47. Significant increase in our budgeted wages. It's for the same reason that we have talked about already. It's represents $150,000 increase over run rate. And it's really just an inflation adjustment from 2023 when we were fully staffed. The other notable items in this are operating supplies, which is 53,000, maintenance and repair, which is 50,000. You can see that those are significantly higher than current run rate, but in discussions with the staff that actually perform those services, they think we actually probably could run into needing those kind of dollars in operating supplies and repairs and maintenance. Other items of import in this are on page 48. We budgeted for water meter replacement of 41,409. Again, in talking with the individuals involved with the operation of these services, we felt that 41 was the right number and will enable us to continue. I think it'll enable us to buy just over 100.
Yeah,
New
over 100
units.
new meters.
Yeah, and continue with our slow rollout. And then we did budget water system improvements of 105. That's one where we don't have a specific item targeted to say, hey, we're gonna need 105,000. But we have a water main break, something like that. We just need to be able to access those funds, essentially the drop of a hat. So we put that in there to 105. And then there's another well that the department staff wants to target for rehab. And so we've got 75,000.
Two, yeah, well, two.
well, two. And then another item of note, just to keep in mind how much debt the city carries. The water fund has debt service budgeted at 287,000, and we'll spend every last dime of that on those debt service payments. This one though is doing so well. We've got 150,000 budgeted in operating contingency. And then an additional 704,000 in operating income balance. Moving on to sewer. Yeah, Yeah, we would love to see 2 million in
Yeah,
unappropriated ending fund balance. in there.
that's staff's recommendation for utilities. We want to see 2 million in both water and sewer.
For if an entity is large, we really need to get to a point where we are seeing, you don't have to run to to Business Oregon or some other lending agency to solve our problems for us. But, I mean, it's just, I don't know.
It's a good
I just feel
policy.
like that's the direction we need to get to. Maybe some of us like personally have a credit card. It's like, this is my emergency. I don't feel like a city should do that. And okay, sewer is not water. The 523 carryover is not a typo. It's not negative, so that's
Right.
positive, right?
I was happy.
Yeah, so we got that. I did mention in water that we could have some increases in water. We could greatly exceed our budgeted revenue. I had to use some of those anticipated items for collection in the sewer fund to get to where we needed to be. So run rate is 775,000 for sewer fees. Budgeted is 800,000 for sewer fees. We left Canyon City revenues flat, and then we have a couple other smaller items on the revenue side. Sewer department expenditures. Now, in this one, the historical data, you'd have to get a little creative. You'd have to go to the last page on this, which shows the history from the now dissolved joint sewer or sewer plant department, to get what really your compare period items are for 23 and 24. Because it would be misstating it to combine them and call it the sewer fund. In the current year, the budget and the run rate for the current year do show the combined sewer funds. We did combine those two last year in last year's budget. And so our run rate for personnel services 250, we budgeted 401. So again, just following that same trend, a significant increase in anticipated hires. Same thing here, operating supplies and sewer chemicals. That was after a significant discussion with staff that actually perform these services. So we budgeted there what we believe is appropriate, which is 20,000 in chemicals and 40,000 in operating supplies. I missed this on the water, but payment in lieu is budgeted as an expense here. That was your revenue back in general fund. It's for both water and sewer. It's $40,000. Okay. Moving on, page 52. You'll see the debt service on this one is 104,800. And then we were left with a choice for the contingency. We chose to put it into equipment of 37,000 instead of budgeting a separate operating contingency. The same reason we did it for water, the same reason we did it for motor pool. We just want access to those funds in case something crazy happens. But 37 isn't a lot, but that's all we have in here. One notable thing you'll see is we don't have anything for sewer plants. As of right now, we don't have a source for the fund. You want to elaborate more on that, or you
We have asked into the feds and the state. And so, I think you all know by now, I've beaten this, to death, but I budget conservatively. That's my personal, that's how I budget. And I did not want to put funds in there at 10 or 5 million and show an inflated budget if we aren't going to get those. And so if we get those funds, which I am expecting and optimistic we will get something, we'll come back with a resolution and we'll add those in. But I didn't want to have an inflated budget with $10 million sitting in there that we were going to get for sewer plant when we don't have that. And so we know there'll be a loan coming from DEQ. Again, we don't know what that looks like right now, and so there's nothing there. Doesn't mean it's not gonna happen, doesn't mean we won't be back.
And so we may change that between now and the next meeting and have something else to present to you there, but as of right now, we don't have a source for it. And so we didn't want to put it there and say it's gonna be a grant and it turns out to be a loan or vice versa, or things like that. And we don't even know the amount.
We wanna
We're
be
gonna
as
able to
transparent
spend,
as possible.
this year. And the other thing, on that if we do approve a budget that doesn't have anything for this in it, and then the very next day, DEQ calls and says, hey, we're gonna give you 15 million bucks. We can bring that in by resolution because we have a restricted revenue source for a specific purpose, and we just bring the two of them together by resolution.
So no harm, no foul.
Okay? And if it would make on the discussion piece, I don't know about that anymore. The discussion, that was the discussion piece, but if you want to see something in there to make you feel more comfortable as the budget committee, you can direct us to do that. So that was the only piece to just throw out.
Yeah. That's what was done in the past. And we just did it.
Okay. Urban Renewal Agency,
Everyone take a deep breath.
beginning fund balance is negative 911,864. Remember when I said water was funding everything we do, and there's actually more cash showing in beginning fund balance in water than we have to our name today? That's why. We did budget for a $925,000 loan in the current year. We have not taken that. I mentioned earlier, we didn't want to, we have enough cash to continue operating. And so we have chosen not to incur the interest. And to be completely transparent, we'd love to make it without doing this, but we cannot balance the budget with a $900,000 beginning fund balance and no $925,000. Can't, it's impossible. And we have to balance the budget in order to present. Doesn't mean we have to take out that one. Just, that's kind of a nuance of budgeting, is we will budget because we have to balance the budget, but we do not have to take out. Just throwing that out there. Okay. The URA is significantly encumbered this year. I've mentioned many times, I think I've even been quoted in the paper. It's talking about a 5-year pinch point. Well, the pinch is getting a little tighter this year.
When you say this year, this second.
Budget year. Budget year. So the current year, we budgeted for and actually nearly expended 140,000 in development incentives. In the budget year, we have enough money to put 2,500 in for development incentives. Why? Well, we have incurred significant legal costs with the URA, so we have to budget for those. We have to get an audit, and the URA requires its own separate because of the dollars that were expended. And so we have that budgeted in there. But I think we did hire some firm to do some consulting with the URA. Have to pay for that. That's where the professional services are. I don't know what else. There's nothing else to cut. And so you've got 2,500, and then on top of that, we have to budget for the $69,000 loan payment back to Business Oregon that gets transferred to the general fund. And so you only got so much money when you've got a $911,000 fund deficit at the beginning of the year. Yes, we've offset it with a $925,000 loan just so we can get to balance, but when we do that, you've only got $118,000 in net revenue. So that's where we come off our expenditures.
That's what we did.
So that's how that comes out.
So if you didn't hear me and you weren't here yet, the visual is you're hanging from a bar and we're just hanging and we're trying to hang on. And if we can make it until the time is up, we'll claw out of this. But meanwhile, there is absolutely, Rob and I, you either laugh or you're gonna cry. There's really no option or no answer at this point. We're just sitting there hanging and we're just waiting. And so, that's where we are. So good or bad, the URA is just hanging, and then we'll see how it goes in the future.
And now we budgeted for 105,000 in property taxes. Could they come in higher? Certainly. But we We don't want to budget for dollars we don't know are gonna be there. I feel like
Right.
105 is pretty much guaranteed. In fact, it'll probably be, how much higher, I don't know. And that's why we didn't budget for any additional dollars.
Again, that conservative approach.
And no, you're not gonna put interest income in your deficit fund balance of 911. Okay. All right, so that's the end of the budget. We've got a few more items on the PowerPoint. And I'm gonna hand this over to you, Melissa.
Yeah, I have to be the bad guy. We're doing good cop, bad cop. So, so as we were developing the budget, and I've been here now over a year, I'm bringing to this body now, granted, these are all gonna be council decisions. It's council policy, council decisions, but I feel like the most transparent thing to do is get the buy-in from the budget committee, because these are dollars that impact our budget. So these are adjustments that I am proposing to council. It's a targeted strategy. It's gonna increase revenue. And it's going to help the long-term sustainability of our city. I don't know how many of you have been at county meetings, but kick the can apparently has become a theme. We certainly don't want to kick the can, and we certainly don't want to lapse. And to your point, Liz, you know, our budget's okay. I mean, you may not see that or think that, but we're okay. We're actually building up and we're doing okay. We will not be in another 2 years if we don't do something about our rates or our fees. We just won't, because we can't sustain it. We are losing revenue every day in the office. And so the recommendations are grounded in fairness. They're grounded in service demand and cost recovery. So I thought long and hard about this. I didn't present them last year. I'm presenting them this year. We hear every day at the counter, you guys hear it every day out in the city. Everybody's on a fixed income, right? Well, the problem is the way we're doing business right now, the fixed income people are subsidizing everything else that's happening in the city. Their tax dollars and your tax dollars, if you're on fixed income, are going to support development and people's needs or their businesses or they're burning. So, anyway, I have a list. It's for council, but I want this committee to think about it, discuss it, and probably recommend it as part of your package to council.
So do you want to, we were gonna talk specifically about the time we have,
Yeah.
about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk
These will
about
be
them. These will go real quick.
These are gonna go quick,
Okay. we should
Yeah.
have 15 minutes.
and then we'll go back.
All right.
So, the first one is dealing with utilities rates. You all know that we have a rate study and we do have to raise our utility rates. We're gonna do that in January again, the $17. That's across the board. That's for everybody. However, tax exempt properties do not pay for property taxes. Remember, that's our general fund, our 300,000. Tax exempt properties don't pay. So your roads, your services, all those features that they use every day, they're not paying into the property tax. So one of the formulas and one of the ways that cities are making this up is they're charging double on their utility fees. It's a big step. I know Canyon City does this to some extent. I know there's other cities around that do this. That would bring in about 50,000 a year into our utilities. Extra. I think we have 83 properties that are tax exempt in the city. 83, that's a lot. So there's one. Oops. Two, snowbirds. We have a lot of people who leave for the winter. When they leave historically in John Day, they call the public works, they get their water and sewer or their water turned off. And they walk out the door and we stop charging them a monthly bill. There is a big move. I don't know of very many cities left in Oregon that still allow this or still do this. You can't sustain on that. That means you as a taxpayer are making up the difference of them not paying. If your toilet can flush, you need to be paying the base rate. If we change our ordinance and the snowbirds are paying their base rate, they can still turn off their water to keep their pipes from blowing up. But they need to pay the base rate, and so that would be another 50,000 into our utilities. Water and sewer. Meter turn off and on fees. We do not charge a fee. When the guys go out there, if somebody's leaving town and want their water turned off, they call City Hall, the guys drop what they're doing and go out and turn off and on the meter. I have been in City Hall, and this is not a joke, where somebody has called to have their meter turned on or off, I can't remember which, and then called back right after they did it, or the next day, because they decided not to leave, they were gonna wait a week, and the guys had to go back and turn it on and off. We don't charge. They're dropping what they're doing and they're going out there and touching people's property. That costs you money. As a person on a fixed income, you're subsidizing that. Anytime we work or touch something, we need to be charging. I'm sorry, it's the fact of life. And if you're going to have the, realization that you gotta leave town and turn something off, you need to be charged a fee. So I'm proposing a fee. You can discuss, council can look at it and decide, or they can, that's up to them, but I'm proposing 25 up to 50, or however they want to, whatever they want to think about doing, but we really do need to start. I think it's being abused a little bit, actually, to tell the truth. So, new utility account setup fee. This one is right now, the way we have our utility account set up is, somebody wants a new account, they come in, they have to pay like a $200 deposit. And, or they can show us a letter of credit from somewhere and they can get their account set up. What's happening is, Sarah has to do a lot of work. And on the back end, we don't have any way of knowing who's paid that deposit and who hasn't, and when it gets paid back. So unless you keep track and you come in and ask for it, we don't really have a mechanism to start handing those back out. And she loses all the work she did on the front end. And so most cities have a setup fee. You pay a flat rate when you come in, $25, $35, and you pay a setup fee to have your utility set up. That's money we don't have to hang on to. It's not a liability for us, and it goes right into your utilities. The next one is late fees. Everybody has bills to pay. If you don't pay most bills, your electricity, any other bill you have, your credit card, if you don't pay on the day that it says you have to pay, you get a late fee attached. It's normal. We do not. So if your bill is due on the 15th and you don't pay it, the next day, Sarah spends most of the day sending out 300 letters to people who didn't pay on the 15th to remind them to pay. There's no fee attached to that. I think they might have to pay postage, but I don't even think that letter, I'm not sure, but a lot of work, and we're babysitting. And so most cities don't even do that. I mean, it's, you pay your bill or you get a late fee attached, and when you get your bill, it's a late fee. You go 2 months, you get a door knocker, you pay that, and you go, you're starting. I'm proposing we pay a late fee, or we set up a late fee. We also are proposing planning fee adjustments. Developers need to pay their fair share. If they don't, you are subsidizing it. Your fixed income people are paying for it. I have spent 15 years in planning, and although developers will cry and scream about fees, they also know to pencil them in and they will pay them. There's a myth that you won't get development if you charge fees. Not true. Some of the most expensive places to develop are still growing exponentially. They just grow. Developers need to pay their way. Right now, we're subsidizing. And so I have a list of planning fees that are going up, and they're going up pretty big because it costs to have a planner. And you have to do it, state code now, you have to be up on the state codes in the ORS, and you have only 120 days, which may be knocked down to 95 with the new state code. So it costs money. And so I'm proposing planning fees to be raised to pay for its way. System development charges. This one is a hit or miss. Actually, I put it in there, but it's something we need to think about down the road. Right now, it would kind of probably hurt the city because we're subsidizing them through the URA, a lot of them. So it's something we need to look at in the future about how we charge those and how much we charge. Licensing and permitting, I'm proposing a business license fee increase. Right now, we do it on employees and there's a whole, mathematical equation. Some city use, it's not good or bad, just for a city our size, it's easier to do a flat rate straight across the board. So proposing, a modest increase to those. We do not charge for burn permits. Sarah spends a lot of time taking in a burn permit, handing it to Dawn, who has to look at it, review it. And, we don't charge. So I'm proposing a modest charge for that, $5-10. Council in this body can decide if that's something you want to do, the actual amount, but, that's a lot of paper that Sarah's touching that we don't get paid for. And we do have to route those. Back to the business license also, just so you know, we're not handling those correctly internally, which is a lot of what I want to focus on this year. Those need to be routed to several different, staff and agencies to have signed off, because if we administer a business license and say the business is allowed, if something's wrong or it burns up or the hood vent wasn't checked, or we're on the hook because we allowed that business in town. So, these are things that need to be taken into consideration. Fire hall facility rental. This is a hard one, but, we've been talking about it, and what's happened is we have allowed people to come and use this facility, which is beautiful and nice. They don't pay a fee, they don't pay a deposit, we just give them a key and hope for the best. And what's happened is a couple times, it's been trashed. And so what's happened is our tenant, who pays rent, has come over and cleaned it because they've had to deal with the bathrooms and everything. The other thing is if somebody loses a key, we have to go and rekey all the locks then, and that costs money. So I'm proposing a rental fee. Could be modest, it could be anything, but we need, carpets need clean, walls need touched up. We need to carry over our costs. There's no maintenance fee in the budget for the building. So, proposing that. And,
Can I ask a question?
mhm.
Have you checked the original grant? Does the grant require us to have this facility for the public?
It requires it, but it doesn't say you can't charge.
Well, that's what I wanted. to know.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll look at it again too.
Okay, we could talk
Yep.
about that.
I'm done.
So my big question that really matters for the next meeting is, does this group direct us to go ahead and let the unpaid comp fund diminish and rebuild someday when we're on better financial footing? Or do we want to keep it and siphon off revenues from other funds to build it back up?
My experience is when you don't, what you hear is it's a unfunded requirement, right? Because every year you have the potential of an employee leaving, you're paying out $1,000 worth of vacation, depending on what they have to do. And if you don't have that in your budget, it's an unanticipated, it's an unfunded mandate or unfunded expenditure. If there's on the flip side, I see your argument about simplifying the budget, eliminating a fund that just has this one little purpose that you could realistically build into the separate funds depending on their level of risk, number of employees, that type of thing. And if there was a mechanism where we could, in my opinion, comfortably endure, in other words, years down the road, people understood that funds are not just, you get somebody in after we're all gone and says, hey, we're gonna just budget exactly what it costs, and they don't consider that, then they're gonna get the city in trouble, right? So if there's a way to mitigate that in the future, maybe through policy or something, then I'm all for simplifying the budget when needed fund. We're worried we can't, but it's nice to have that in your back pocket, because if you don't need it, it just rolls over.
Yeah, it's a nice to have. Not every fund can afford it, some can. And that's the situation we're in right now. I have no problem at all putting it back in there. I just want direction. I don't need a vote. I just need some kind of direction from this group.
I think
Where do we get the money?
to be on the safe side, I think we better leave it at a minimal amount, keep it at a low amount, but at least keep it so that we don't get ourselves in trouble.
I think it's a time where we need to be as transparent as possible.
Mhm.
And so that
that takes care of one of those things that people might question. And I think it's a good idea to keep it as funded to the point that you can.
Is that the general consensus?
Anybody else have any other thoughts?
Well, I think we need to keep it, but you kind of led to it, like, where you could, is just to put it under, like, the fund, it should be the water fund, or sewer fund, general, put it in just a line item in there, instead of a separate larger fund, but since you know some of them
Yeah,
are unfunded, having that one may cover, be a
Yeah.
better way of doing it.
cause some of the funds are subsidized anyway,
Right.
so, yeah, we'll work on it.
Does anybody
Yep.
feel strongly that we just need to get rid of it or? Passionate one way or the other? I mean,
No, we don't do
it's-
that. We don't care.
The risk and the expenditure is gonna be the same, the money's gonna be there, it's just kind of how we show it, and I like the discussion points about transparency, I think those are.
Doesn't having it as a little thing off on the side you can point to, kind of
Yeah.
make everyone a little happier all the way around.
Yeah,
So it's totally fine, yeah.
we're happy to put it in, I kind of hear consensus, unless anybody has any objection.
What else?
Okay, now, what else do we want to
Yeah.
talk about?
10 minutes.
You have 10
You
minutes.
can go back to some of the discussion items.
Let's go back to the discussion items and we can just start and let's just take one, let's just do the first.
Public safety.
Public safety.
Oh, yeah.
Safety.
And remember, this isn't police necessarily, it's fire. You call it public safety, but it's fire because remember, your fire is taking all of the property taxes from the general fund. Not that it's a bad thing. We love our fire department. We love our, we're not getting rid of Dawn. We're still gonna have fire, but again, it's that sustainable, like next year, what do we do if all of a sudden, we're not getting that property tax in the way the IGA is with the district, we're on a set fee here. And I don't know if you all know how it works. We're running out of time, but 5 minutes, I'll give you real quick. The district is everybody outside of John Day, and the district, the boundaries of wherever they are, they pay a tax on top of their property tax.
Well, it's.
District, you're right. John Day does. So we're subsidizing all the citizens of John Day. Does that make sense?
So the theory is that the property taxes paid by the city is to cover fire. But in reality, the cost of fire is equal to all of the property tax that is intended to go into the city in total.
So if you were going to implement a public safety fee on top of our utility bill, which is gonna go up $17 in January,
Yeah,
how much, what's a reasonable amount
that's the question.
that
That's
would
the
even
question.
generate enough
Yeah.
funds
Yeah,
to?
I think it'd be important to look at $5 on the bill would generate this much revenue and that would
Yeah.
be the, put it in context for us.
So we know
Well, the
what $6
$6,
is.
$6 is
$78,000.
yeah, 78,000.
And that's, and I appreciate that, because that helps, 78,000 for $6, but that's my concern, is we're already paying $6 for a community development fee, which is the same thing, it's just called something different.
Right.
And I'm speaking from somebody who tried to do this once in a past career and crashed and burned hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was directed to find a revenue source, and I found one, this is back relatively a newer thing in Oregon. But I think the feedback, I think it's very important we get, make sure we've got good community buy-in for it, and we're gonna have to really. If we're to go down that road, my opinion is we really have to talk to folks, because we're already taking big hits
Mhm.
on our utility bills and ask them to pay as much as I think the need is there, that might not be.
So we're talking about the rural fire district.
Mhm.
Okay, so the rural fire district is paying into the property taxes, correct?
And a district and a district tax too, like you have a library
But-
tax or whatever,
but
and a school
In,
tax.
in reality, they aren't paying any bill that we're incurring because we built this building and we're paying our fire chief.
The
So they're
district,
not paying into that.
they are, they pay us a stipend, however, the formula,
The formula could be renegotiated. Yeah.
it's a little. I'll tell you what, in a perfect world, here's from staffs, yeah, I'll give you my opinion, as staff. My opinion would be for this to be sustainable, you would need to have the voters in John Day vote to join the district and be a district. And remove it from the city and just be a fire district. That
So
is.
then
the
we could add
ultimate
it
way.
to their property tax.
It would be the same, it's the same. You would be paying what the district, the rural district pays. It would be a same, and then it would be your fire,
It would be its own entity, separate.
its own entity. Because technically, the rural fire district is its own entity. It's just,
Then how does that affect
Embedded.
everything if we are able to control the city's fire thing? And then we potentially become diluted in the fire district?
you become the district and
We
you
would
are
have
your
our
own
own
entity.
fire district.
It would be your own entity, right? Well, you would be part of the rule. It would be one fire station district. We wouldn't be a part of the city budget. It wouldn't be part of us.
It would be creating a special district
Right,
that would collect its own taxes, have its own board, and run its own
It's
operation.
like Parks and Rec.
it already is doing
Like Parks,
that.
it's like Parks and Rec.
And it is already doing that on the rural side.
How
They
does that
already
affect-
have their
And
own.
that would
It's just
come off-
we're kind of in bed with them. It's kind of a weird situation.
That would come off your property tax.
Yes, it's the same thing as any other rural district.
You say come on.
Well, I meant
It's added.
added to, that's what I meant, sorry.
How does that affect employees, though?
Well, we'd have to talk about that
We
Yeah.
figure something.
because we're not losing Dawn.
No, I know, yeah, no, so that's what I'm wondering, and how is that, if we did something like that, how would that affect Dawn?
There's 1,000 ways. to
There,
do
I
that.
was gonna say you do an IGA, you do some kind of
Contract.
contract, yeah.
That's a minor issue.
Okay.
I mean, there's other ways in the tax, I'm just talking about in the immediate future, there's like, we can try to go to the table and renegotiate the IGA. We can work on getting the special district if that's what you guys all want. We could work on, there's the fee that probably
So,
isn't
so the fee
popular.
piece, let me add that. Eric had asked, well, what would it be per amount? It's $13,000 per dollar. So for every dollar we charge per month to residents, it's $13,000 in revenue to the city. So let's leave it at that.
So I'm kind of hearing two things. I'm hearing the John Day Fire District and joining the rural fire district.
No, no, no.
So which
No,
is
the
it you're
rural
proposing?
district, it would be you, the
Can I-
citizens of John Day being part of the rural.
Can I-
district.
Can I just interrupt? We got like 2
Yeah,
minutes
we got-
before we've got a hard stop. Questions, clarifications, last timeline is budget adoption. Can you just talk about
Yeah.
our timeline real quick, next meeting? And then we can pick this discussion.
Yeah.
For sure.
Next meeting is May 27th, before our city council meeting.
So 5:30.
5:30. For the counselors, I'm, proposing that we probably start our regular city council meeting later at like, 7 instead of 6:30, so we actually have time.
Yeah.
And we're not on a time crunch.
That's fine.
We can even start later if you think, but we'll talk more about that. And then, you will at that point have public hearing and recommend adoption to the council, who will adopt on June 24th.
Any questions about the next meeting?
Well, and here's our plea. This is from Melissa and me. If you
Yeah.
have questions that you want to see more data, call us, Melissa, before the next meeting.
Yep.
And maybe not like earlier in the day, but like.
Yeah, do your homework, have your questions ready, get them to us so we can get you the
We
answers.
want to be able to get you all the answers you ask for, and just for sure.
Thank you, everybody. Good
Meeting
job.
adjourned.
Melissa. Good job.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yes.
They did that.
And that's